We're on. Okay.
Yeah. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Let's maybe ask. Can you guys let us know as you join in if you can hear us, because we have had an event in the past where the audio did not work, and we want to make sure that that's not this event.
Oh, hi, Mitchell. Amelia.
Hi, guys. Can you hear us? We just want to make sure that everything is working before we dive in. We're going to wait for a thumbs up.
We're waiting.
You know, it's good that it turned out to be a very nice sunny day here in DC.
Yes. Oh, okay.
Speak a little louder.
Okay,
All right.
well.
So we may bring this closer. Is this better? We appreciate the feedback. We want to make sure that you guys can hear what we're saying. So it's important that we know. And do you have your phone handy? Because I know that you're going to be asking questions. Perfect.
I do.
All right. So Meto and Amelia, can you guys hear us? Is it better now? Okay. All right. Perfect.
Wonderful. All right. So hi, and thank you for joining. This is our first ever Professional Foundations Facebook Live. I'm Christina Dimitrievsky. I am the Global Co-Chair of Generation M, the United Macedonian Diaspora's Young Leaders Program. I'm here with Aleks Trpkovska. She's the author of The Pain-Free Path to College. Aleks and I actually met about a month ago, maybe, and that was the first time that we talked about, having one of these events on Facebook. So we're so excited to be here. Aleks, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. So hi, everyone. So I come from Bitola. I was born and raised there. Zdravo nasite, pozdrav. I'm going to speak in English because I think most of our audience understands English primarily for work and business reasons here in the U.S. So I came to the U.S. when I was 14. My family still lives in Michigan. Shout out to the Michigan crowd. And then I moved to the DC area for undergrad and grad school. So I went to Georgetown undergrad and grad. I've stayed in the DC area and worked as a management consultant. In the process, I have been helping students apply and go to college, as well as MBA programs and other graduate programs. I actually just worked recently with somebody who was applying to Masters in Divinity. Oh, wow. It's a lot of fun to help people focus on their passion and find a way to get there. So when you and I met, we talked about what are some topics that would be of interest to young professionals, and we determined that resumes is probably going to be one of the top topics.
Definitely.
I think that we also have some other people who are interested in pitching in. So Jovan Nobetkovsky from Illinois may join us for a session on interviews.
So that's so exciting.
Yeah, so this is a professional series, essentially like series of workshops that we will have for your crowd.
I love it. And we're so excited, to actually kick off this series. I think, what else were we going to cover other than the interviews? We were talking about
scholarships. We can also talk about finances, and it can be a separate session from scholarships because let's face it, a lot of us tend to go towards credit cards, and good financial management is a really good habit. I've been there, done that. So yeah, we can come up with a number of other ideas, and I think we have 3 or 4 that are kind of like pre-outlined, interviews being the top next one.
Excellent. So I guess we'll get started. I know we're all anxious to learn about resumes and LinkedIn. So like I said, or like Aleks said earlier as well, she's the author of The Pain-Free Path to College. She also touches on resumes in the book. Aleks, do you want to elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, thank you. So the way in which I talk about resumes is hopefully going to stick with you forever. And I'm sorry for blocking the UMD logo. I might come closer to you. So the way in which I think about resumes is I think about movie previews. So I love movie previews, and actually that's one big part that I like about like going to the movies early. It's not just finding a good seat, but actually like seeing other movies that I may like in the future and I may want to go. When I don't go to the movies for a long time, it's literally because I'm not enticed or pulled to see something. So when recruiters and HR of different offices see resumes, they literally do see a lot of copies of resumes. So it's no longer paper stacks because most of us are in the digital world. But at the same time, once you see 100 resumes per day, it can get a little blurry. So you need to find a way to stand out. And this is why I think that movie trailers are really catchy, right? They need to catch your attention really briefly. And there's some ways in which you can stand out. So I think that's where we can share some tips around how to make resumes really stand out and pop up.
Okay. So I'll just ask because this is something that I've been
Please,
wanting to
yeah.
know. Personally, when I put together my resumes, obviously you want to do your best to, I guess, go along with the job description, kind of tailor it to that. What would you suggest other than that would be beneficial to include in your resume? How do you make something that sounds interesting to you? Kind of like how do you tailor it to the job, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so I mean, tailoring to the job it can be a little bit tricky. So if you don't have the necessary experience to begin with, and if you haven't done that role before, it can be a little challenging. However, like you can also have an objective on top that
Okay.
says, here's what you're seeking, and that can be tailored. And in it, you can say like, I'm determined to like, not necessarily I'm determined, but the objective should say determined, team working individual focused on results. Like that kind of a sentence, for example, goes for a number of professions.
Okay.
It's and then you can think about what is it specifically for that particular profession that matters. But I would say your cover letter is going to be more of what's personalized and customized. Your resume as a whole, I don't personally customize my resume a heck of a lot. The experience that I have is the experience that I have. And so what I would say is that your bullet points need to have impact. And it's a little bit awkward because we're sitting next to each other and we'd love to look at each other in the eyes, but I want to look at you too.
Sorry.
But so we're going to look at each other's eyes in the video. But yeah, I think as far as resumes goes, you need to make sure that you're conveying impact, the impact that you have had on those roles. And to the extent that you can connect it to what is the impact that they're going to want you to drive on the job, then that would be ideal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
You may have some questions coming in, so
Yes.
you have
So
your phone.
I'm just double checking everything over here just in case. By the way, I think I forgot to mention in the beginning, if you're watching, thank you. We're so happy to have you here. Feel free to tweet us at Gen Macedonia on Twitter. Mention us in the comments on this live video with hashtag GenMFBLive. Send us in your questions and we'll answer them in real time.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I guess another common question, maybe you can give us, your own personal opinion. What are the best things to include in your resume? What are some of the top things that employers like to see?
Yeah. I feel like there's so many sub questions in that
I know,
question.
I'm
So
sorry.
we'll break it apart. No, we'll break it apart because there's so much value, and those are the questions that most people ask. So let's just talk about the structure of the resume. The first thing that I'll go ahead and say is like one of my pet peeves is multi-page resume. So we are talking to a young audience, and yes, I have worked since I was 14, but guess what? My resume is one page. And the thing is, generally the last, let's say 10 years have the most relevant experience. If you have only had one job and you have had career progression, you still have sort of separate heading and separate bullet points for each of those transitions, I would say, and areas. But there really should be very few reasons why somebody would have a multi-page resume. And if that you would like, you could send in the additional pages or additional bigger resume or CV after you're in touch with the recruiter. Because the thing is, the recruiter, when they see a resume, they're trying to sift through so many so many resumes. And here's the other part about the format of a resume. Don't have clear headings. Um, the computers and the systems nowadays that actually pre-read the resumes, they may not pull out some of the key experience that you need to really convey. So it's important to actually make sure that your format is right. And you and I chatted about this last night. We're gonna be sharing the link to the resume template that I have students use, whether you are applying to college or whether you are a graduate, like undergraduate or graduate student without a lot of experience, or you're just starting out. This is a really good template to use. All you need to do is create a copy off of the Google Doc and tweak it for yourself. I think you're going to have a very effective resume in under an hour. At that point, like honestly, most of the resume is information like your position title, the length of time that you worked somewhere, and your name and your contact info.
Oh, wow.
The rest of the information,
Yeah.
that's going to be in bullet points, it's all about impact. So that actually takes time to think through. But about 50% of the space on the resume is information you already know. It's easy to produce. Another thing, you know, that I want to mention is that a resume is a live document. So it's not like I'm done today with my resume and I'm done for the rest of my life. It's going to get updated and you need to keep it current. So the truth is, most of us hate doing this, and I don't know why. I think it's easier for us to actually help somebody else do it than do it for ourselves. But we need to invest the time into ourselves and our family, like future, by keeping our resume fresh. Because if let's say, you get laid off or there's a change in your company for whatever reason. I actually recently had a friend that was let go, and she's a top performer. So it was absolutely a shock. But at the same time, like she's ready. She has a resume that's accurate, that lists all of her accomplishments and awards at her previous roles, so she can really use that right away. So don't forget, like this is not something that you get done with and you put it on a shelf and it collects dust.
Yeah.
Like it's something that you need to revisit periodically. And as you're having accomplishments at work, let's say that you get some kind of an award, and you, for example, with UMD, you're helping coordinate the conference next weekend, I think, right, in
Yes.
Florida, and you can do a plug for that. But there's so many things that happen for that if you can just do the conference and you can forget to go and update your resume. So whether it's on your job or you're doing something for volunteering, just take a moment after you have a big success to write down, what did you do, what did you accomplish, and what are the skills that you got. It really needs to be one sentence, like a bullet point on your resume. And it's easy if it's top of mind, and sometimes we forget good things that we do.
Definitely.
So take a moment to do that for yourself.
So I think we actually have our first question.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mithil, for sending in your question. This kind of goes along with what we were just talking about. So along with the resumes, how often should you update your LinkedIn profile?
I would say the same kind of answer. So keep it current and keep it relevant. If there's some kind of a big success that you just had, like include that on there. If you're doing personal rebranding and you want to try another like industry or something, definitely you're going to do that as a part of a larger effort. And like undertaking, it's not going to be as smooth as just adding a bullet point, because the thing is, when you're updating LinkedIn, most people don't always get a notification that you've updated your LinkedIn profile. If you get a new job, they do. If you get some kind of an award or somebody mentions you, they do. But if you're just tweaking your LinkedIn profile continuously, people will not notice. But if somebody's seeking you out and you mention one of the keywords, now they will start paying attention to you. So again, living, breathing thing. I would go into it at least once a month and add something to it, or tweak something. Just reread it. This is your representation of yourself. So if it doesn't say something about you that you wanted to, you don't need anybody's permission to change it. Now, I want you to do it in a way that's honest and true. Don't claim that you have accomplishments that you don't. that's going to bite you in 1,000 ways, and it's just not really good for brand building. So be honest on your resume. If there is a specific experience that you know you need for the future to get the dream job that you want, focus on getting that experience either through volunteering or through other means, but don't just pretend like you are an expert in an area that you're not an expert in. You may need to take a cheap class to get there, but honestly, don't pretend. Lying is the worst possible strategy with
Yeah.
resumes.
And honestly, taking an additional course or two, it's so beneficial. Like I've learned this, I guess, throughout my, professional life in
Yeah.
the last
You're a
few
young
years.
professional.
I'm a young professional. I can say this. But yeah, definitely. Any courses that you can take, anything else that you can get under your belt, just to kind of like really build your resume and just sharpen your skills. It's definitely been so beneficial to me, and it's another qualification, I guess I could say.
It is.
So, yeah, that's awesome. And I guess kind of going back to the resumes, and I guess on LinkedIn, what's something that you like wouldn't include some of the main, I guess, mistakes that you see, the most common mistakes that you see in resumes and on LinkedIn profiles?
Well, the most common mistakes that I see are a couple. So number one is spell check or lack of spell check. I feel like there's no excuse for that because, and the thing is, all of us make mistakes. So I'm not saying that I'm perfect in that, but the thing is, you have to be able to review your work. If you don't review your work and you post something out there that's not your best foot forward, can you imagine like your employer having you post something on their behalf as a company that's not proofread? And that's the thing. This is the exact like correlation. So if you do not have the bandwidth to check your own resume, and this is your biggest like advocacy for yourself that you can do if you're looking for a job, then the truth is like why should anybody hire you when you're not investing in yourself? Like how are you going to invest in your deliverable at work? Are you just going to send in your first draft for everything? Hopefully not, because
Yeah.
that's not a recipe for success. So number one mistake that people do is they don't spell check their resume. Number two is they don't really explain what they did. So um, I think all of us are guilty of this, but and by the way, like Christina's checking for messages. Feel free to put in your comments and questions. We're happy to answer them live. I know we're on for half an hour, so just like 15 more minutes, but we're here to help you guys. So we're happy to address anything that you may be curious about. But to go back to my to my earlier thought, like people make mistakes with their resumes because they're really not thinking about the impact that this should be having on the other person. So if I'm sending in a resume, I want that recruiter to see if I have relevant experience or enough interest, curiosity, and like hardworking experience in other areas that may translate to their interest in me as a person, to bring me in for an interview, to bring me in and train me and invest in me. So if your bullet points don't really explain what you did at the prior role, I'm going to use the example of like a lifeguard. So we can say that I used to be a lifeguard in high school, and it can be a bullet point with a couple of years of experience that you did there. Now, most of us can imagine what a lifeguard does, but if you don't talk about this, and you, for example, you were on a team, you probably did CPR, you probably were able to respond in a crisis really quickly, and I would say patiently, and not without a panic. And the thing is, there's not a lot of people that have that kind of skill set. But initially, unless you draw my attention to this, I would think, okay, so you know how to swim. That may not be relevant for this position. But again, it's about what you bring out. So if you were a team leader, were you coordinating the shifts for other people? If you were coordinating a conference, like, we've coordinated the first global UMD conference with Meto, so we know how much effort it takes into it. So for example, for you to add something like that to your resume, it really does involve talking about the marketing, the coordination that goes into it. How many people did you reach? How many people actually attend the event? So there is a lot there that it's really like a blank canvas. So unless you take the time to think about what it is that you want to share, you're really asking to do all the work for you and to think about, okay, would this person be a match for us? And the thing is, if I have 10 resumes, and even if it's only one of them that talks about the impact that they had, the skills that they have, I would go with that one person because I know that they will get to the point, they will get to the point quickly, and they know how to advocate for themselves. All right, we got a question, so
We
I'll
have
let you
a
read it.
question from Filip Yotovsky. He's asking, what do grad schools look for in resumes or experience overall?
Yeah, so I mean, it's different. So MBA programs, for example, because it's a master's in business, they look for your experience, they look for results, they look for undertakings that you have had and risks in different areas. If, for example, on the other hand, you're applying for a master's in divinity, it's a completely different focus. It's not as much about your experience. Your experience is going to inform who you are, but those master's programs, for example, will pay a lot more attention to your personal statement. And even the MBA program will pay attention to your personal statement quite a lot, but the resume itself is going to stand on its own. So let's see, did we answer that fully? What do grad school? Yeah, they look for the experience. They look for your ability to truly convey why it is that you want to pursue grad school in particular. So so it's not just a resume at that point, it's everything else. But if your resume does not fit into the picture that you're trying to portray, then there's going to be a big disconnect. And you're setting yourself back instead of portraying one nice picture of who, for example, Philip is. Thank you, Philip, for the question.
Thank you for the question. So we have another question from Mito, actually. So he says, a lot of times when I receive resumes for our internship program, the resumes are not very long and do not highlight the skills students can bring to an internship. What is your advice?
So this is the big part, and for anybody that's joining now and may have missed the first part, here's the big tip. Most of your resume, like maybe I'll split it up. About 50% of the space on your resume is your name, your contact information, the headings and of the title of the role that you held, and the dates which you were in that role. Like that's a lot of landscape that you're using up. So the other space really needs to be strategic. You really need to think about the impact and the skills that you're bringing. So if you're a student that's applying for an internship, you can talk about the classes that you've taken, any research projects that you've done. Research matters a lot in internships. If you're a business school student, for example, you can ask for internships with entrepreneurs, and um, you can talk about like the marketing project that you've done for your marketing class. And the thing is, as an entrepreneur myself, I would say, okay, I want you to practice more of that you did in your class for your project in real life. And I think that's awesome, right? If I was an intern, I would love that experience because it's giving me a way to test out if this is something that I'm interested in, if I would enjoy pursuing this as a full-time job. So just because you don't have a lot of experience, it's not a bad thing, but you need to think about the experiences that you've had, the experiences that you want to gain, and how do you get there. So yeah, I know Mito's sharing observations, and the thing is, like, they're really valid observations. You want to get this kind of feedback from the people that are on the other side, because I've been in this position, and I think we often get to this point where it's like, well, we know what we did, and it may not seem glamorous. So I'll share one example, right? So I don't think that most interns make copies nowadays. I think most offices may not even have a copier. But let's say that all you did for a summer was you made copies. Well, let's put that into perspective. And I want you to think about this. Like, what is the value add of you doing copies to the business? If you worked in real estate, did you help a real estate agent get their marketing materials out sooner? Did you help them really, like, I mean, that's like really like tangible thing. Did they get their marketing materials one day out in the mail to everybody else? And does that help them somehow produce better results? Because the truth is, it does. And if you do the same thing with social media, If you automate their posts, how much time does it save them? How many people do they reach? And the thing is, you're going to need to get really diligent about tracking the impact that you have in your positions, because when you start, if somebody has like 0 followers, and when you are 1 month into the position and it's time to update your resume, you should take a look at what's the growth that you've had there. And chances are you will have a growth, even if it's 5 people. So the interesting part is that with numbers, you can do a lot. So sometimes you can talk about percentages. So if somebody had 5 followers and now they have 10 followers, you can talk about you doubled their impact. And I know it's kind of silly, but you really need to think about how to convey the information. Because the thing is, you did something different than what they were doing, let's say, for 10 years with 5 followers, and now you come in and in 1 month they have more. So you're doing something that's effective and that's working. Yeah, maybe you can share the next observation.
Perfect. So another one from Mito. He also said, I have had several friends in the past ask me to review and proofread their resumes. And a lot of the time, I notice their resumes are 2 pages long or sometimes even 4 pages. And they're like 27 years old or 30 years old. How long should an ideal resume be?
Yeah. So this brings us back to something that we shared early on, and it's my personal pet peeve. And Meto, I would just cut to the chase and say, 1 page is plenty. I like, unless you're a CEO of a company and you have had like that level of experience in multiple companies, I really don't think that there is a necessity for you to go in and explain that much. And the thing is, I have, okay, so I'll give you an example, right? I've started working since I was 14, or when I was 14. So I have worked at Target as a sales associate. I worked at Macomb Community College. Shout out to Michigan again. I was a tutor and I was a library assistant. And I actually don't even know what else I did, but I think I had a couple of jobs there. Then I worked at Kirby Vacuums and I was a marketing assistant. And this was like in the days of telemarketing where you called right after dinner time and people hung up on you. It was not one of the pleasant jobs. I did tutor a lot also in college, and I have helped so many students like apply to for college admissions. Um, and even that, like for example, I don't list that on my resume. I may cite my business paying free to college as an entity, but I only list the days when after I incorporate it. And so I also had about 10 jobs when I was at college. It's really like, and the thing is, like, I kind of chuckle when I see this on somebody's resume. What you did 10 or 20 years ago, and you may not have enjoyed it at all, it doesn't mean anything to me right now. The thing is, like, what am I searching for? What are the skills that I want? And does any of that experience really relate? If it does, and you feel like there was a big time lapse that it may not fit on a chronological resume, then you may say like relevant experience and list the title maybe of the role and then just the impact that you had. So if somebody has a specific resume that they want to share, like I would be happy to take a look at it and offer some feedback. I'm good with either track changes or Google comments if you want to share it in Google, and I'll just take a look at it and provide you some feedback. But honestly, you have to be able to prioritize, and that's the thing that a one-page resume says. Are you conveying everything that you can about yourself with impact? Because you don't need 30 bullet points that describe the position. You need 3 bullet points that describe the impact that you had. If you can't do that, then there's really a challenge in you conveying your thoughts. And I would say there's an opportunity there for a communications class or something else that you may need to take. And the thing is, it's not just going to help you for a resume, it's going to help you for the rest of your life, because you can't write 30-page emails. You need to really get to the bottom of like what is it that you're trying to say, and it's going to be critical information. So the way you do your resume is the way you do everything. And the quote is, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. So if you cannot prioritize, then chances are you're going to have a challenge prioritizing your tasks at work as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
We
sure.
have another question from Emilia Dmitrievsky. She's asking, is the aesthetic of the resume valuable to an employer?
I'm curious what you mean about aesthetic. I would say when the format is distracting, and feel free to comment, Amelia, but when the format of a resume is distracting, it can be a problem. So, what you mean by aesthetic? When I think about a resume, I think more in terms of a format. I think of section headings. I think, and when we share the template and we can put it in the comments, that's going to be something that you can leverage. It's going to give you like a true and tested template that works. It needs to be clear. You want them to zero in on your impact experience and on your value add, and not to be distracted by um, any other aesthetical ideas. So I don't know if you can clarify. Maybe I'll clarify my comment as well, but happy to take a look at your resume too.
Okay, perfect. So when we put out our poll the other day,
Mm-hmm.
I think one of our top choices was to actually critique a resume. We didn't actually get a resume in, so if anyone wants to send theirs in, we can blur out your name, and we can do a separate critique on it in a separate live. So we have that, as well as another question that was up there was, how do referrals work, and when do you send in your resume?
Yeah. Okay, so I'll talk about referrals really quickly, and I'll tell you how it works for most companies. Companies love to hire people that their employees refer. And the thing is, if I work at a company and I'm happy there, chances are I would refer good qualified people to work there as well. So my HR team or my recruiting team would take my word over taking like a blank resume from somewhere else, like in the cold web, any day. This is what they call a hot lead in marketing, for example, but it's just their time invested into us, into an interview, for example, is going to be well spent with somebody that's a warm referral from an employee. So if you are interested in working for a company that one of your friends or your former colleagues are working for, then have a conversation with them. Have them review your resume. Have them give you some feedback, because this is a matter of you fitting in with that culture. And then when that's done, ask them what their process is, the way in which it works at, so I work at PwC PricewaterhouseCoopers, and it's a big consulting company. We also do audit and tax, but I work on the consulting side. The way it works is that I have a portal and a system on the inside that I can submit a resume in. And what I can also do is I can figure out who the recruiter is. I can figure out who the team is that's hiring. I can ask them to take a look at the resume even before I submit it in, if there's something else that needs to be edited or added to this. I can organize an informal interview, like for example, for you, if you wanted to work for PwC, like it's not, there's no guarantees that somebody can give you that the company's going to hire them, but they can say, hey, Christina's interested in working for us. Can you, and specifically in this department, can you give her 15 to 30 minutes of your day and just get on the phone with her? She will have questions. And here's when you come through and you make your friend look amazing, because Christina's going to come super prepared. She's going to know a lot about the company. And yes, sometimes like that would involve preparing her for it. But a referral means that this person is already so interested, knows about the company, they're ready to work there. If they're given a job offer tomorrow, chances are they'll take it. And you may know more about the benefits than somebody else off the street. So you're going to ask a lot of less questions. And you're already going to have an advocate for you within the firm. The other thing that I also love when we were talking about referrals, and this is not something that a lot of people talk about, is there is a referral bonus. So most companies do give current employees a referral bonus for referring others. So when you're asking somebody to refer you to their company, yes, they're doing you a favor, but the thing is, most of the time there's a payoff for them too. So there is a little bit of win-win situation for the two people engaged as well as the company, because they're going to get a good worker. So you need to recognize that this is a win-win or win-win-win for everybody, and you need to use that strategically. So you need to show up prepared, you need to do your work, but also know that the person that's referring you has vested interest in you getting this offer and taking it. So yeah, there is a referral bonus. And so make sure that you work through the system the way in which that person needs you to work it, because I'll just mention it very specifically. If somebody applies through LinkedIn or through just the job portal, and they tell me later they're interested in that job, there's really nothing that I can do on my side. Like, I can put in a good word with the recruiter, but I cannot monitor the steps. I cannot see if they're going to invite them for an interview or if they've closed the position. I cannot give any update to this friend of mine. But if they actually let me submit this for them, the portal will send them an application later, and they will go through all the steps that they need to do, with the added benefit of having an advocate within the firm to watch out for them as their referral. And I have a couple of people in the pipeline at PwC, and I'm crossing my fingers that they get their jobs, because it does take a long time. So be patient, and make sure you show up. I hope that was clear. This is very clear to me because it happens almost every single day. But if any of you guys have any questions, let me know.
Perfect. Another question. Should folks just list references on their resumes, or should they just say references available upon request? That's a good question. I've actually wondered that a lot. So,
okay, so I'll answer this question in two ways. We'll talk about resumes and we'll talk about LinkedIn. So the thing is, if you have a reference, I would love for that reference to be on LinkedIn. So if it's a current supervisor, a past supervisor, a past team worker, you should have them and invite them to comment on LinkedIn and give a testimonial, or an endorsement is what it's called. So that speaks a lot for you. One, it's public, it's for everybody to see. It's not something that's in your file for, buried somewhere, and or something that they can change, frankly. So this is something, a point in time where they feel about you like very favorably, and you should let them share it publicly. When a recruiter goes in to check your resume, they will also check your LinkedIn page. Chances are they will check all of your social media pages, because they want to make sure that then they're not recruiting like a loose cannon. They want to make sure that you're a responsible individual. So LinkedIn, I think using that space and that endorsement is best on LinkedIn. On the resume, I would put available upon request, if that's a part of the position requirement. I have never mentioned references on my resume personally, and I think it's kind of understood that it would be available upon request. But if you specifically, so Mato lists a lot of position description, for example, for interns, and if that's something that you have listed as you need people to give you references, then yes, mention it on the resume, either available upon request or provide another page in an email. Like, just find a way to answer that. But for me personally, it does not live on my resume. And I would not list people's names and contact info on a resume. I wouldn't list them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we're at 38 minutes on here.
Sorry,
which is
people.
Great. No, I think this is great. So do we want to take a couple more questions? If anyone wants to send in.
If you guys are here and you want to ask questions, we can take your questions. If not, we can stay on maybe for 2 more minutes.
Yeah, we can do another 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So just comment your questions below, or tweet us at Gen Macedonia with the hashtag GenMFBLive.
And Christina, if somebody is watching the replay and they want to ask a question, tag us on that, and we'll make sure to answer. And we know that not everybody is able to watch live.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And also with the poll that we put out the other day, so we have here critiquing an actual resume and then critiquing an actual LinkedIn profile. So again, if you guys are interested in that, feel free to send in your profiles, and we'll block out your name, your picture, and everything, and we'll just kind of go through it.
Yeah,
no pressure.
And the thing is, we don't have to do a full Facebook Live. What we can do is we can do an image with a couple of call-out boxes that say, do this or don't do this. And this is not about pointing fingers. Nobody,
exactly.
I'm learning things every day, right? I know, and I can give a lot of advice, but the thing is, if I am applying for a role, I would ask other people for feedback. So trying to pretend that any of us, like if you're applying for a role and you assume that everything is perfect and 100%, I would say that's naive, because it's, even for me, like I would never do that. Most CEOs would not do that. If they're applying for like another dream job that they have, they would not just drop their resume and expect that everything will go well. There's a specific process that they may follow and enough. And they would ask their colleagues or peers that they respect, obviously for some confidentiality, but but also for some help in getting there. This is not a one-man show. Even though it's a representation of who you are, it really does need feedback from others.
Okay, perfect. So I guess it looks like that's it for today.
Okay. Thanks for the 9 people that are still on this. We know some people came in and left, but appreciate your time and joining. It's awesome to connect like this.
Yes, for sure. So let us know if you like these kinds of events, I guess. If there are any other questions that you want to ask us, send them in. You can message either one of us on Facebook or Generation M on Twitter or on Facebook. Anywhere really, we'll find your questions. So
thank you for all the hearts and the likes.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. And also one last thing. I just want to remind you all that next weekend, February 8th to 10th, Generation M and UMD are holding our 5th Macedonian American Leadership Conference in Miami, Florida. So it's not too late to register. If you haven't done so, do your best to get out there. We'd love to see you all there.
Yeah. Who wouldn't like going to Florida at this time of the year? It's cold here. But...
Exactly. Okay, well, thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.